Hi, friends. Good evening, and we are back again. Lena, Asher, and I are going to be exploring human values today. In fact, I really enjoyed last week's conversation on human needs. In fact, I've been reflecting and observing myself as to which needs show up and how they show up. Thinking about which needs show up as a priority needs is very interesting, actually. But, Lena, I have to tell you this. I have never ever been as excited or zestful about working on a project as I have this one.
I'm so glad to hear that, Agnella Rajesh. You know, it's what I'm most kicked about as well. You remember when I interviewed the author Hector Garcia for the book Ikigai?
Yes, yes, yes. I have read the book. The one about the Japanese concept that means a reason for being. That when you have direction or purpose in life, it makes one's life worthwhile. And then an individual takes spontaneous and willing action, giving them satisfaction and a sense of meaning to life.
So correct, Agnella Rajesh. So, I when I was interviewing Hector, I told him that I've always framed it in various ways. Like when I was running Kangaroo Kids in Billabong High, the statement was to ignite human greatness. And
Mhm.
um, you know, while I was talking to Hector, I actually had what they call the light bulb moment. That
Yes,
aha
yes.
moment. And I said to Hector, you know what? I've just realized that my ikigai is to help others find their ikigai. So,
Mhm.
Agnel Ramesh, you being in a state of mojo means that I am naturally also in a state of mojo. And many people say this again and again. So there's Ken Hudgens who sort of said that something like the meaning of life is to give life meaning. But I've framed this with kids so many times. Nobody says it as well as Patanjali. When you are inspired by
Yes.
some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all your thoughts break their bonds, your mind transcends limitations, and he says your consciousness expands in every direction and you find yourself in a new great and wonderful world. And this is what I'd love for all kids. Dormant forces, faculties and talents become so alive, and you become a far greater person than you ever dreamed yourself to be. So it's something like that, the quote, but it's just absolutely fabulous in what it means.
Yes, and through Corroboree, we have aligned Ikigai. That has at its nerve center the hope that we encourage parents to allow their children to find their Ikigai. And in the process, we will find that children of today transform the world of tomorrow to be wonderful and abundant at a very collective level. And at an individual level, it would be so awesome to see more fulfilled, happy, and successful adults. So today, friends, we are exploring values, like how we explored the needs on last Sunday. What is the difference between a need and a value, and why is it important for us to reflect and bring more awareness to what our values are, Lena?
So, last week we covered the human needs theory, both that of Maslow and Anthony Robbins.
Yes.
So, a value is a conscious choice to act in a certain manner to meet your own needs. So, that's basically what it means. So, remember we spoke about two people
Yes.
needing significance, but having very different perceptions and so acting in different ways to meet that need. So, both may have had significance as a need, but they use different values and different rules to meet those needs. So your life values act as like a personal compass. If you spend time reflecting on and choosing your values, consciously choosing your values, then they can kind of help you um, um, guide every decision that you make and action. And let's face it, Agnella Rajesh, it is a combination of our thoughts, decisions, and actions that add up to being our destiny.
Absolutely. I recall you are discussing this in one of our Moonshot conversations. That that peace is one of your key values. And whenever you need to make a decision, even like which car to buy, you refer back to your set of values to see what aligns the best.
So yes, if we want ourselves and our children, right, to live a life at the deepest level of life
Yes.
fulfillment, we can achieve it in one way, and really, really one way only, and that's by deciding what we value most in life. What our core values are, and then committing to live by these values each and every single day. So this is like selection of a school that we spoke about, in our last moonshot, that or of a life partner, that if you don't know what you value, if you don't think about this deeply, then what we will end up doing is kind of just waffling through life, with no clarity, because we'll end up following like an outside in approach, so we'll sort of look at what do other people value, and what does society value, and what does the media value, and then we'll end up kind of following that sort of blindly. um, and at some point, whoever does not use an inside out process will feel this, because if you don't do it, you'll feel either a lack of meaning, of a flow, of fulfillment, of happiness. So we all have to keep uppermost in our minds that all decision making comes to a clarification of our values. And if we have spent time actually doing this clarification exercise,
Mm-hmm.
of our values, then decision making can shift from states of doubt and confusion to ones of absolute clarity. And individuals who do this work own the power of leading lives in a very empowered way, where their philosophy and their action of life are kind of aligned. In fact, you can discover your values, but understand, so sort of you can discover your values by accident, but
Yes.
sort of what we want to do is that consciously pick values. We can see it, values that our families have talked about or lived, or families society has talked about or lived, or values that our superheroes have talked about and lived. But instead of unconsciously picking them up, we can
Mm-hmm.
actually sit down and consciously select our values.
So, choosing your personal core values is one of the critical things we should do. And this can make an amazing difference on how one lives their life. So, we should spend time thinking about and choosing our personal core values. And these will reflect the fundamental choices of who we want to be. And we will derive a deeper sense of fulfillment, as it will provide us the criteria we need to influence any and all decisions. So, how should we go about choosing our core values, Lena?
So we don't have a journal this week, but we'll have a journal
Mhm.
next week where we'll have all of this sort of outlined. So
Yes.
there are a few things to consider. Remember, your values may not always be the same throughout your life, right? And in the same order of priority as well. So just like when we spoke about needs, and your needs can change. So it's helpful within blocks of time to sort of
Mhm.
revisit them. So I realized, because I did Anthony Robbins twice, right? A Date with Destiny. So the first time I had financial or economic stability very high on my value list. And today it's not on my value list at all. So in fact, for me to live the choicest life of fulfillment, I have all the financial security I need. So no more financial security is going to sort of add any more value in my life in any way. So it was high at one point in time because I needed to gain that financial security, sort of to gain the
Mhm.
independence that I needed. Today, I have that independence, so I no longer have it on my values list. So let me go through some of the things you need to consider. Your
Mhm.
core values should align with your personal vision and mission, right?
Okay.
Values will provide the measure that help you kind of live meaningful lives and help you fulfill the purpose that you have.
Mhm.
And at some point, we'll discuss that. But this will also help you eliminate values that are not consistent with where you want to kind of go. So to explain this, Agnila Rajesh, I'll sort of talk to you about two countries, yeah, that
Mhm.
most people know about. Let's think about China and America, and
Yes.
and show you how their values kind of shift their destiny. So
Mhm.
think of some of the things America has valued, like freedom, choice, individuality, competition, all fairly high in their list of values, and compare that to China's values.
So I don't know what China's core values are, but I can see that they don't have the same set of values as America, and I can see that the values of both countries have given different directions to each country's destiny.
Absolutely. And the objective is not to judge, not what different countries value or what an individual's core values are. But it is to know that regardless of whether we talk about a country, a
Mm-hmm.
company, or an individual, what you choose as your core values will kind of shape your destiny and will affect the decisions you take. So, the first thing to think about is alignment, and the second
Mm-hmm.
is to remember that the values you consciously choose should be inspirational to you
Yes.
personally. So
Mm-hmm.
whether we talk about personal values or company values, these values should encourage a fulfillment of purpose, and they should be somewhere visible so that they inspire and motivate you. I have my values on a chart paper pinned to my bathroom wall because I see that
So
every day.
I would love to know what some of your core values are, Lena. So step one is alignment, and step two is that they should be motivating to you to fulfilling your purpose. What else should we think about, Lena?
So then, step three is your values should speak to you.
Okay.
You can learn from seeing others live their values,
Mm-hmm.
or you can learn the idea of values from others.
Okay.
But these core values should help you define who you are
Mm-hmm.
and who you want to be, and they ideally will reflect the priorities in your own life, and um, they kind of emphasize who you want to be, right? So step four is that they should provide you with help in everyday decisions, including your relationships.
Okay.
Step five is that while your values will evolve and grow, you can't keep shifting them on a day-to-day basis, right? So
Yes.
till you have created the future that you have designed,
Mm-hmm.
so then you can revisit your personal vision, your purpose, and your values all together.
Mm-hmm.
And once you've reached that milestone that you were aiming for, so as an example, for the corroborate, I revisited my entire life plan after I sold my company.
Mm-hmm.
And then I designed a new one and recrafted some of my values based on this new sort of vision and purpose that I had.
So you gave us an understanding of something that was on your earlier values list,
Yeah.
financial security. Well, that did not make your existing list. Can you give us an example of something that was not on your previous list that you found that found its way onto your current list of values, Lena?
Yes, yes. So peak state was never on my list before. Look, so,
Hmm.
when I made my 10 years ago, I was a lot younger, and I took my health for kind of granted. It now forms a part of my core values list.
Okay.
As I really want to sort of get through and do all the things that I still plan to do, and I need a few years up my sleeve to do that. So to meet my new vision and my new mission, I will need to be in a peak state, right? So a very apt quote by a guy called Joseph Wood Crutch is, he says something like, every time a value is born, um, existence takes on a new meaning. And every time one dies, some part of that meaning passes away.
Oh.
So once you have defined this core value, describe what it means to you, right? So
Hmm.
you should try and meet your personal value list every day. So you should make it as easy as possible to meet, because
Hmm.
then you feel it kind of, you feel good. So for me, peak state includes sleep. It
Okay.
includes meditation. It
Hmm.
includes not watching the news. It includes choosing nourishing food as many times as I can. And
Hmm.
I'm very lazy, but it sometimes includes working out. So,
Well, that makes two of us, Lena.
so in this list, the most impactful for me, right, to be able to get through and do the work that I do,
Hmm.
is feeling in peak state is my sleep, right?
Okay.
So I what I kind of discovered is sleeping at different times affects my sleep as I've
Hmm.
aged. Once you hit menopause, you really have to watch this stuff. So earlier, I used to go out 5 to 6 nights a week and party till the wee hours of the morning. Now I will at best step out once or twice a week, and during this time, no times at all. But I will, I'll make sure that no matter what, whether I'm going out or not going out, I try to hit my pillow by midnight. So midnight is now my new sleep time. So whether I go out, I don't go out, and I did not have to force myself to do this. Agnella Rajesh, I found that it pulled at me automatically. You know,
Fantastic. But Lena, thanks a lot for that joke that you have aged. I'm really So happy with that joke. Thank you so much. So, Lena, the direction of our lives is controlled by the magnetic pull of our values. And if we choose them in accordance to our goals, it can consistently lead us to make decisions that create the direction and ultimate destination of our lives. In fact, I can see the impact of this. Before doing anything like watching or not watching the news, meditating or not meditating, partying or not partying, it would be so easy to ask yourself, will this increase or decrease my being in a peak state?
Perfect. And will this increase or decrease my going towards, my personal mission? So yes, and I said earlier that there are no right or wrong values lists really, right? So
Mhm.
when you do the journal work next week, you'll find that you kind of arrive at about between 5 and 10 values, and as you list them down, just like I told you how I feel in a peak state, be specific as to how you will know whether or not you're moving towards this value or you're living
Okay.
this value or not. So, is this value in alignment? Are you congruent with this value? And do as many examples of how you feel this value as you can.
So if I choose love as one of my values, I would include patience, forgiveness, compassion.
So those are very generic, right? That's like that you can get from any self-development book, right? That's
Okay.
how that's how they'd ask you to do it. But I have made, like, love is in my values list, but I've made it more
Mhm.
tangible. So it's firstly more easy for everyone to know what I mean by love, and it's
Okay.
more easy for me to feel love on a day-to-day basis. So my description includes anytime that I am loving, right? Or I'm noticing the love in others,
Mhm.
or anytime I connect with my family, friends,
Mhm.
or colleagues, or my partner in a loving way. That could
Mhm.
be WhatsApp messages also. Or anytime I cook a meal for my son or my partner. That tells
Mhm.
you that I don't cook that much. or, or even, and people forget this, every time I'm loving to myself, in tangible ways, like gifting myself a massage,
Mhm.
or in intangible ways, like not being so hard on myself. Sometimes I have an off day and I don't feel like working, and instead of beating myself up, I'll just be kind to myself and say, I'll treat myself like I treat somebody I really really love, and say it's okay. So the more I meet my values, Agnil or Rajesh, and live in alignment with that, and the more I can feel that, the more grounded I feel, the more whole I feel, the more joyful I feel, and the more fulfilled I'm going to be. So every day, you can be sure that I'll meet, my values in one or multiple ways, and so I know when I put my head down on the pillow at night, hey, I've lived those values, and that makes you feel really, really good.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. So what I'm sensing is that with any value option, you consider that it is important to have a clear and distinct description, so it is
Yeah,
not ambiguous, and you know tangibly and feel it when you are living in alignment with your core values.
yeah.
I can see some immediate benefits: stress reduction, making better, easier, and more conscious decisions, and ones that work in alignment with who we want to be. I can see that our values will act as a set of guidelines for our thoughts, decisions, and actions. That life would be one of our choosing rather than a life directed by others to their set of values. What other benefits could there be, Lina?
So, Agnel Rajesh, for one, our values help us build and maintain our identity as unique
Okay.
individuals. So, other than what you've already said, it also helps us find environments and people that align with our values and support our aspirations. Before you and I got onto this journey, we had a few conversations to see, do our values and aspirations kind of align? Um,
Absolutely.
so then it can support your growth and your development. It can help you in times of conflict and confusion, and it can
Mhm.
provide you with motivation that moves you forward. So the crucial thing is that once you define your values, that you're consistent with living them regardless of what happens. Because the
Mhm.
only way for us to have long-term happiness is
Mhm.
to consistently act in accordance with what our values are. When you do, you will live with a sense of certainty,
Mhm.
of inner peace. You sent me a message about somebody making lots of money doing whatever they're doing, and I don't know whether you sent it to me to get a rile out of me to get a response, but what I do know is that someone who's living a different set of values,
Mhm.
and I don't know whether that person has inner peace and a total congruency of mind, body, and soul.
So, can you give me an example of how an instance in your life when your values gave you total clarity on which way to act when you are conflicted?
So, okay, so let me give an example. I had a CEO once, and this is years ago. So, if anyone's watching from the tax office, he asked me in passing that he had a way to save tax, right? And should I do it? He asked. And
Mhm.
you'll just say yes. Obviously, if you can save tax, you'll save tax. And he understands my values. Integrity is very high on my company's list of values as well as my list of values. So it was when I owned the company. So without understanding that what he was suggesting was legally correct, but
Mhm.
it was morally wrong. So there's a big definition there: legally correct but morally wrong. So we have to understand that he acted on his suggestion, and when I came to know what it was, I made him reverse the transaction. And so not only did I lose the tax saving that we would have made, but I also lost an additional loss of money at that time. And everyone advised me to just let it pass and not incur the loss. And
Mhm.
I said, for a little while I was confused and conflicted, but then all I had to do to clear that confusion and confliction is to go back to my values list. Integrity is on my values list, right? So the decision then becomes clear. Take the loss and uphold the value. So if your value is true to who you are, you will act on that value regardless of whether somebody's watching you or not, whether somebody knows you've acted to that value or not. So years
Mhm.
later, when I sold the company, and the private equity firm who bought it said, they've never seen, they had never bought a company that is just so clean. And imagine how I felt, this inner stillness, joy, and calm, that I I lived in alignment with my values. And that, it's priceless. And it's, living in accordance to your values is worth whatever financial loss I had to take, um, I had to make. And it's worth it. The only way to be truly happy and fulfilled, Agnil or Rajesh, in the long term, is to
Yes.
live in accordance with one's true values.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what happens to people who don't think about or consciously choose their values? I mean, I know most companies choose their values, but I don't know of many individuals that have consciously done so.
So the problem is that most parents and most teachers don't think about this process,
Mhm.
and they don't teach this process to their children. So then, as children, we are congratulated or rewarded when we meet the values that our parents, teachers, or society have for us. When we meet these values, we're applauded and encouraged, and when we do not, we are either ignored or berated. So if children see that we have thought about you know the, our purpose as parents, and we have consciously chosen our values in alignment with this,
Mhm.
and we speak to them about it, we become role models for them to do the same thing. Some values that we live by, like competition and achievement, may not actually be our natural values, but we live by
Mhm.
them when we're kids. And it's not that we chose those values, but these are just sort of values that are remnants of an academic system that had unconsciously included this, in their list, and that becomes unconsciously crafted in our own values list.
So, can kids actually think about the values process?
Absolutely, they can, and in ways that immediately shift their actions. A single mom came to me with her son when I was sitting in Billabong for a counseling session, and she was talking to me in front of her son that she worked hard to keep him in our school, so she had to do a lot of work to pay the fees, and she was concerned with his results. So I
Mhm.
actually took him through a values process verbally, right, and asked him to do this honestly with me, and I knew I wouldn't judge him. So then, when somebody knows you're not judging them, then they can be honest about what they're saying. And for him, getting into game design college
Mhm.
was important to him. So I asked him for him to get into that. What was getting in his way? To apply himself, what was getting in his way? And he said his phone and gaming on it till late night, was sort of
Yes. Yes.
distracting him. And instead of telling him what to do and me advising him, I asked him, what would you need to consciously value in order to meet your goal? And he came up with focus himself.
Mhm.
Um, not only did he come up with the solution himself, but he also came up with the way to not be distracted solution himself as well. He said, I'm going to buy a lockbox
Okay.
because I value my privacy. I'm going to put the phone in it at 10 o'clock, lock it, and give it to my mom. So my privacy is intact, and I'll take it back in the morning. And that way I can focus, sleep well, and wake up and, do everything I need to
Fantastic.
do. Yeah.
Fabulous. Fabulous. So he himself identified the habitual pattern that could potentially destroy his goal.
Yes. With our children, we have to coach them into coming to their own conclusion. So we have to
Yes.
actually be coach and not managers to our kids, right? So when they come to their own conclusion about what's important in their lives, and we then ask them to consciously choose their values that will support where they want to go, you know, then they'll actually do it. When people engage in negative behavior like overeating, over drinking, constant gaming, or mindless television watching, these are just distractions for states of feeling a lack of fulfillment. And then these become habits over a period of time. And and then when we try to change the behavior, rather than looking at the underlying cause of the behavior, we try to change the habit. So if you ask kids, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to reach? And then who do you have to be in order to get there? What do you need to consciously choose? You will get, as your values, you will get a far more effective outcome. So it's not just for our children, it's for all of us.
Fantastic. So friends, I can see how fabulous this could be. Asking children to choose their values as an intelligent and conscious choice, and not because of what priorities have been conditioned into their lives. If we could give our children the gift of helping them to design their own life, create their own set of values, we would actually empower them to shape their own ultimate destiny. Is the value list also a high priority and a low priority, like the human needs, Lena?
Yes, absolutely. So how you prioritize the values will matter. You will do more to achieve those that are higher on your list than those that are lower on your list. So this is known as the hierarchy of values. So for a start, you can imagine that that the values in your list are important, but also how you put them in terms of hierarchy are important. So can you imagine if you had emotional intimacy and autonomy or freedom, both high on your list and close together?
Okay. I can definitely imagine the push and the pull that would cause. As you get one, you would fear losing the other. So in a relationship, you may yo-yo between emotional intimacy and freedom. It would be important to know your hierarchy of values and make sure that they are well thought through. Would it not be equally important to know the values and their hierarchy of those that you are very closely associated with, like a personal or a business relationship, Lena?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you and I did, and doing so gives you an insight on the personal or business relationship or decision making and their actions. I was not aware of this process before my marriage. And while my ex-husband's a great guy, our values were in total conflict, and this is what created a strain in our relationship. You can imagine if you get into business with somebody or partnership whose highest value is financial security, and yours is contribution. This is sure to create some amount of friction, right? So it is important to select any relationship based on values, and it's also vital to our well-being to choose work that aligns with our personal values. I remember talking to Amish Tripathi and actually did a webinar with him. And he worked as a successful banker for years. And then at the age of 42, he just chucked it all one day to become a writer. So at some point, consciously or unconsciously, he would have realized that creativity is very high on his values list, way higher than financial security. But he may have chosen his vocation as a banker based on the way society or anyone has programmed the value of financial security.
For Amish Tripathi, it worked out well. But I can imagine if he valued creativity and could not pivot from banking to writing, he may have ended up living a life of frustration instead of fulfillment. So now I understand, Lena. Some alignment of values would be important in the work we choose to do and in relationships as well. If values are really misaligned, it could cause the failure of a relationship altogether.
Yeah, and interestingly, we usually align our interests, like we
Yes.
both like reading, or we both like the beach, or we both like travel, and our objectives, like we both want a home and a car, and 3 kids and a dog, and our vision. We want to contribute to the world, to people's lives, to reduce global warming. But if our values are not aligned, right,
Yes.
we will at the worst destroy the relationship, but in the least we'll be constantly in a state of friction and conflict. So and this will be always a source of discomfort. So if one partner values contribution and the other values pleasure, both of them will be unfulfilled. So imagine one partner needing to party, holiday, the pleasure value, and the other needing to sleep, be focused, behave in ways that meets the contribution value.
Does this mean that we should always look out for a partner who is more like us?
So different values and different personalities are two different things. You've met
Mhm.
my parents. They're chalk and cheese. One is an extrovert, one's an introvert.
Yes.
They both have completely different interests. The only thing that's kept the marriage alive for 60 years is that they have similar values and a similar hierarchy. So for anyone in our corroboree who has not found their partner yet, a great tip is to make sure your core values are aligned, and to do the values work, and to do the hierarchy work of your values. In fact, my niece asked me, that Lina, mommy, you are married and divorced and blah, blah, blah. What is the number one thing you would look for a partner? Or I should look for a partner. And I said, media has taught us to match personality, to
Yes.
match interest and value, look, status, power, or money. But the number one thing is to look for someone with similar values.
Fantastic, Lina. That is so awesome and to the point. In fact, I can see that the values we consciously choose will have a great impact on our inner world and form the foundation of our character. And if we don't consciously choose the right values, you're likely to adopt the values of other people, which means uh, our identity will depend on the identity of someone else. And given the importance of this, is this not something we should actively teach our children as well, Lina?
Absolutely. So for a start, the more your parents out there are aware of your own values, the clearer you will be in expressing them and communicating it to your children. So you can't say you value honesty and then tell your kid, have your kid catching you in a lie. Because, I've always said this, your actions speak louder than words for your kids. My parents openly expressed the fact that they valued family and contribution, but they did this in a way that walked the talk. I would see my mom take care of her mother and my father's mother. I would see that our home was always open for family to stay. Even a few years ago, when my dad's sister lost her husband, I saw my mom and dad take care of her financially, physically, and emotionally. So I watched my mom care for a sister-in-law who was horrible to her, when they lived in the same house. And then towards her sister-in-law's death, when she was alone in Calcutta with multiple sclerosis, my mom would stay with her for days, tending to her, giving her company and solace and love and compassion. So, I have imbibed family, compassion, and forgiveness from the experiences that I've watched my parents do, as have both my brothers, and as has my son. We've internalized these values, Agnil Rajesh, from watching our parents. And then, we've actively chosen which ones serve us individually to meet our own personal visions.
Yes, Lina, I marvel when I hear your brother and you speak, and how you three have not only stayed together emotionally, but also financially.
Yes. And there are siblings we meet twice a year as common shareholders of the
Yes.
business to keep checking that our values are still aligned. We ask questions like what our values need to be to create the destiny we want. And we can question each other. Like I wanted to do something, and my brother Heathen just asked me that, Lena, is that not contrary to what you say is on your values list? And then just that one question grounded me instantly and shifted my mindset totally. So we've imbibed the values that spoke to us from our parents, the three of us. So let me tell you parents quickly, how you can start talking to kids about your values when your children are young. They will learn. Um, they learn their values from what they hear you say, from stories you talk to them. When you read them a story, talk to the kids about the characters and what they seem to value in different situations: curiosity, learning, friendship, love, courage, and so on. Ask your children questions that kind of get them to think about their values. Acceptance, or acceptance of speaking up, contrary values. Being popular, or conforming, again, maybe contrary values, or speaking up for what you stand for. Remember, when your children become teenagers, I want all parents to understand this, that they will reject your values for a short period of time. This is just natural. And because their highest value of all teenagers at that point in time, from an evolutionary perspective, is autonomy and independence. But, by the time they get to be 23, 24, this will normalize and they'll come back to the sets of values that they kind of have learned from you.
So we can teach kids to consciously identify, understand, question, and create their own value systems by modeling and discussing values on our children without imposing our values on them. So before this exercise with our children, I think we should encourage ourselves to do the journal work and think through our list of values. You're going to get a journal. Next week, we are going to get a combined journal, even including today's topic. If we feel lost, take a look at the list and ask ourselves, which one do I need right now? We will come closer to the self-awareness journey of who we are, and awareness that goes beyond the external, our house, our car, our job,
Yes,
many such elements. Yes.
yeah, when you define your values, you define your character. So if integrity is on your value list, you remind yourself of this, and you will act in ways that align with integrity. Values will inform your thoughts, words, and actions. That no one in the world will define you. You will define yourself, and you don't want to simply kind of amble through life. Alarm clock, cooking, feeding, TV. If you want to design your life, you want to set goals and routines and consciously choose your values, only then will it work. I feel that there's a lot of unhappiness in the world because so many people run around in this rat race, living life based on values that are not their own. Each one of us should spend more time defining what success means to us. And this is a quote from 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years ago by Seneca. He said that there are only a few who control themselves and their affairs by a guiding purpose. The rest do not proceed. They are merely swept along like objects afloat in a river.
This reminds me of what you said in the episode on goals, Lena. The Alice in Wonderland story, when Alice asks the path to take, given she doesn't know which possible destination she values, and the cat answers, if you don't care where you end up, it doesn't matter where you go.
Absolutely. So each one of us has a choice of whether we want to live passively or actively. So now we have run out of time, and I want to excite our corroboree on a really enlightened soul that will join us for our next Moonshot conversation. I've only met her once online, but she's become a dear friend, Laila Al-Qadri. My interview with her for our corroboree platform had me in goosebumps throughout the conversation. She will be with us to speak about evolved leadership, or Leadership 2.0, what the planet is calling on all souls to be more of and less of, what this time is communicating to us, how do we want to awaken to the magnificence of who each one of us is, to create a collective, abundant future and steer ourselves away from where we are. What values do we need to have as individuals and as a collective to create a new awakened reality?
Wow, fantastic. That sounds exciting. So friends, see you next Sunday at 5 p.m. Lena and I in conversation with Laila Al-Qadri. Keep writing to us, keep commenting, keep asking questions. Lena will personally make sure that she responds to every message that you have sent. Please be interactive. Keep asking us a lot of questions. We might pick up your questions during the show, or Lena will answer your questions after the show is over. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening. See you next Sunday.
See you next Sunday.